Midnight in the Mojave Desert. Under the cold glow of the moon, hundreds of giants sit in silence. Once, they were kings of the sky. Boeing 747s lined up in endless rows, wings stretching wide, noses pointed into the darkness. Their engines have been stripped. Their cabins are hollow. Dust gathers on their once glorious frames. If you stand there long enough, it almost feels like a graveyard. Because that's exactly what it is. This is where the Queen of the Skies came to die. For half a century, the 747 was the face of aviation. The double-decked hump, the jet that carried millions across oceans, the plane that made the world smaller. But here, in the desert, her reign ended. British Airways retired her. United retired her. Air France, Delta, Qantas, all turned their backs on the Queen. 4 engines were too much, fuel was too costly, and efficiency demanded her execution. The verdict was unanimous. Her time was over, except not everywhere. Because while almost every other airline sent their queens to the grave, one carrier still kept them flying. Not out of sentiment, not out of nostalgia, but out of something far stranger. In Germany, at Frankfurt Airport, Lufthansa refuses to bury the Queen. Today, Lufthansa operates more passenger 747s than any other airline on Earth. Not just keeping them alive, but actively upgrading them, pouring millions into their cabins, and deploying them on some of the most important routes in their network. It's a move that seems completely backwards. While the rest of the industry celebrates the fuel savings of 777s and A350, Lufthansa continues to bet on a design that first flew in 1969. Every airline CEO would tell you this is madness. Environmentalists want them grounded. Shareholders question the costs. Common sense says the Queen belongs in a museum, not on the front lines. So why hasn't Lufthansa given up? That's the paradox. Because behind the romance, behind the nostalgia, lies something else, a calculated gamble. To understand this gamble, you need to look at Frankfurt Airport, Lufthansa's fortress hub, and one of the busiest airports in the world. By mid-morning, it's chaos. Every gate is occupied. Every runway slot is spoken for. Takeoff and landing permissions, the lifeblood of airline schedules, are rationed, regulated, and fought over. At airports like this, one slot is everything. One takeoff, one landing. That's all you get. Now imagine Lufthansa's challenge. They need to move 400 passengers to New York, but they only have one slot. With an A350 or a 777, they can move 300, maybe 330 passengers. That's not enough. Enter the 747-8. Lufthansa's configuration carries 364 passengers. And here's the kicker. In the belly sits up to 30 tons of cargo. Packages, freight, high-value goods that bring in even more revenue. Do the math and it's staggering. That's 100 extra passengers on a single flight. Over a week, it's 700. Over a year, more than 36,000 on just one route. For Lufthansa, the 747 isn't just a symbol. It's a solution. It turns slot scarcity into opportunity. But it's not only about moving more bodies. It's about moving the right ones. Look at the destinations where Lufthansa sends their queens: New York, Los Angeles, Tokyo, Delhi. These aren't casual holiday routes. They're business corridors. And on those routes, premium passengers matter more than anything. A single business-class traveler paying $8,000 for a lie flatbed brings in more profit than half a dozen economy tickets combined. A first-class passenger paying $15,000 to sit in the nose practically covers the cost of the entire cabin behind them. The 747-8 was born for this. Its size, its design, its upper deck and nose, they allow Lufthansa to pack in more premium seating than almost any twin jet. That turns each flight into a revenue machine, balancing mass transport in the back with luxury in the front. So when Lufthansa launches a 747 to Los Angeles, they're not just transporting 364 people. They're flying an airborne profit center. But there's a deeper reason Lufthansa sticks with the Queen, and it isn't just about slots or seats. It's about history. Back in April 1970, Lufthansa became the second airline in the world to operate the 747. From that day forward, they never left her side. The -100, The -200, the -400, and now the -8. They've flown almost every version. That's over 50 years of experience. Half a century of pilots trained, procedures refined, strategies tested. An ocean of operational knowledge no newcomer could ever buy. Where other airlines saw an aging aircraft, Lufthansa saw an old friend they knew inside and out. This wasn't blind loyalty. This was confidence built on decades of mastery. Could Lufthansa replace the 747 tomorrow? On paper, yes. But in reality, Frankfurt can't handle more flights. The slots don't exist. And even if they did, the revenue potential of a premium-heavy 747 flight can't be matched by smaller planes. The Queen isn't just tradition, she's irreplaceable, at least in Lufthansa's world. And that's why every Lufthansa 747 takeoff feels different. When those four engines roar down Frankfurt's runway, you're not just hearing noise, you're hearing defiance. Defiance against the industry consensus, against the trend towards smaller, simpler, more efficient aircraft. Because for Lufthansa, the Queen isn't nostalgia, she's strategy. But here's the real question: how do they make this possible? The answer lies not in the cockpit or the cabin, but in the hangars. Because Lufthansa's true secret weapon isn't just the 747 itself. It's the system that keeps her flying when everyone else gave up. And that secret has a name: Lufthansa Technik. Airlines once poured billions into these aircraft, and now they sit in silence, too expensive to fly and too outdated to maintain. But while the Queen is vanishing everywhere else, Lufthansa has done something extraordinary. They've taken the same aircraft that destroyed balance sheets at other airlines and turned them into moneymakers. Most people know Lufthansa as an airline. What they don't realize is that Lufthansa also owns one of the largest aircraft maintenance companies on Earth, Lufthansa Technik. Hidden inside giant hangars across Germany, Hamburg, Frankfurt, Munich, lies an empire most airlines would kill to have. While other carriers are at the mercy of manufacturers and third-party maintenance companies, Lufthansa controls the entire process in-house. Need a rare part for a 747 that other airlines have scrapped? Lufthansa doesn't wait months and pay millions. They 3D print it. Need a complex engine overhaul that could ground an aircraft for weeks? Lufthansa Technik does it on their own turf, often faster and cheaper than anyone else. Other airlines pay sky-high bills to leasing companies and maintenance contractors. Lufthansa? They pay themselves. This is where the Queen's survival story truly begins. Here's the dirty little secret of the airline industry. Most carriers don't actually own their aircraft. They lease them, paying enormous monthly checks to financial institutions. That works fine for shiny new twinjets like the 787 or A350. But for older planes like the 747, those payments are crippling. Lufthansa played a different game. They own their 747s outright. No lease payments. The jets are fully depreciated, meaning they're basically paid off. That changes everything, because when you don't owe money every month, the economics shift dramatically. Suddenly, even an older four-engine jet can make sense, if you know how to keep it flying efficiently. And Lufthansa does. For other airlines, keeping a 747 in the air became a nightmare. Spare parts grew scarce. Mechanics trained on the type retired. Repair times got longer, costs ballooned. But Lufthansa Technik flipped that weakness into an advantage. They've been maintaining 747s for more than 50 years. They've trained generation after generation of mechanics. They stockpiled parts. They mastered the aircraft inside and out, to the point where they not only service their own fleet but also handle 747 maintenance for cargo airlines around the world. That means economies of scale. Instead of costs rising with age, Lufthansa spreads those costs across a global network. A part they manufacture for their own 747 also gets sold or serviced for another operator. In other words, where British Airways saw costs, Lufthansa saw profit. If you want proof that this strategy works, look back at 2020. When the pandemic struck, airlines worldwide grounded fleets by the hundreds. For most carriers, it was a financial nightmare. Lufthansa chose a different path. They kept their 747s flying. Not with passengers, but with cargo. demand for cargo surged to record highs. Medical supplies, electronics, e-commerce, it all needed to move fast, and the 747, with its cavernous belly and long range, was the perfect machine. While other airlines bled cash, Lufthansa's Queens kept generating revenue. That wasn't luck. That was the power of owning your jets and having the world's best maintenance operation at your fingertips. But Lufthansa didn't stop at maintenance and cargo. They asked a bolder question: what if the 747 could still define luxury in the modern age? Enter Allegris, Lufthansa's billion-euro gamble that the Queen of the Skies isn't just a workhorse, but also the future of premium travel. In first class, tucked into the nose of the aircraft, passengers get something no other jet can offer: space ahead of the pilots. Floor-to-ceiling doors seal passengers into private sanctuaries. Seats transform into genuine double beds. Business class isn't left behind either. Lufthansa is rolling out new Allegris business cabins, offering direct aisle access, larger suites, and improved privacy. And of course, the legendary upper deck of the 747, a feature no 777 or A350 can replicate, remains one of the most exclusive spaces in commercial aviation. Now, let's be honest, the rollout hasn't been smooth. Because the 747 is such a complex aircraft, Lufthansa had to split the Allegris retrofit into 2 phases. Even so, passengers are rebooking specifically to fly these updated 747s. Demand is rising. And that's the real point. In a world where most airlines are shrinking seats and removing perks, Lufthansa is turning a so-called outdated jet into a premium powerhouse. At the heart of it all lies a brutal truth about aviation. Profits don't come from economy seats. They come from premium passengers. Drive through the deserts of California, Nevada, or Arizona, and you'll see a haunting sight. Rows of 747s lined up under the blazing sun, stripped of their engines, their tails fading under decades of heat. And yet, at Frankfurt Airport, those same 4 engines still roar to life every day. Lufthansa's 747-8s thunder down the runway, defying gravity and defying the odds. But here's the truth: this act of defiance won't last forever. The entire aviation industry has already chosen its future. 2 engines, not 4. The Airbus A350, the Boeing 787, soon the 777X. These jets promise everything airlines want: lower fuel burn, cheaper maintenance, quieter cabins, and fewer emissions. That's why the 4-engine era has collapsed. Airbus killed the A380 after barely a decade in production. Airlines that once swore loyalty to the 747 abandoned her almost overnight. The logic was unshakable. Efficiency always wins. So why is Lufthansa still holding out? The answer, partly, is because the future keeps slipping away. Take the Boeing 777X. It was supposed to be the perfect replacement for the 747. Airlines ordered it by the dozens, expecting deliveries in the early 2020s. But delays piled up: certification issues, engine problems, production setbacks. Each year, the timeline stretched further. That left a gap, a critical window where Lufthansa couldn't afford to shrink its transatlantic and transpacific networks. The 747-8 suddenly wasn't just nostalgia. It was the only tool they had that could meet demand on their most lucrative routes. For Lufthansa, the Queen wasn't an option. She was a necessity. But necessity comes at a price. Europe's environmental regulations grow stricter every year. Activists target 4-engine jets as symbols of waste. Shareholders question the wisdom of flying what many still see as outdated aircraft. Even Lufthansa knows the economics are fragile. Yes, their 747-8s are far more efficient than the old 400 models. Yes, the GEnx engines save fuel and reduce emissions compared to earlier versions. But no matter how you spin it, 4 engines will never compete with 2. Every flight is a balancing act between the profits of today and the looming realities of tomorrow. And yet, Lufthansa has made a remarkable choice. Their fleet plan doesn't show the 747 retiring anytime soon. In fact, the 747's 8s are scheduled to remain in service into the 2030s. That means Lufthansa could become the last airline on Earth flying passenger 747s, stretching their relationship with the type to nearly 6 decades. Think about that. From the first delivery in 1970 to potentially 2035 or beyond, Lufthansa will have operated the Queen longer than some airlines have even existed. Is that stubbornness? Or is it brilliance? Because this isn't really about airplanes, it's about strategy. Lufthansa cracked a code others couldn't. They took a so-called obsolete design and turned it into a competitive advantage. They leveraged slot-constrained airports where bigger really is better. They built a maintenance empire that erased costs other airlines couldn't control. They reinvented the cabin to appeal to the passengers who matter most, premium travelers. And in doing so, they kept alive not just an airplane, but an experience. The 747 isn't just another jet. For millions of passengers, she's the flight they'll never forget. The upper deck staircase, the quiet cocoon of the nose, the sheer scale of her wingspan as you watched from the gate. For Lufthansa, she's more than metal. She's a brand, a statement, a crown jewel. But let's be honest, we all know how this story ends. One day, maybe in the 2030s, Lufthansa's last 747 will touch down in Frankfurt. The engines will spool down. The jet bridge will roll up. Passengers will disembark, unaware that they've just flown on the Queen's final voyage. And then the tug will tow her away, not to another flight, but to storage. Maybe to a museum if she's lucky. Maybe to the desert if she's not. The age of the Queen will end, just as it did for every other airline. But here's the difference. Lufthansa will have given her the grandest farewell imaginable. Not a quiet exit, but a decades-long encore. A final act so bold that it forced the world to stop and notice. And maybe, just maybe, Lufthansa has shown us something more. That efficiency isn't everything. That sometimes the old way can still surprise us. That in a world obsessed with cutting costs, there's room for strategy, creativity, and even a little romance. Because while other airlines saw the 747 as a liability, Lufthansa saw her as an opportunity. And they proved the world wrong, at least for a time. So the next time you're at Frankfurt and you hear the roar of 4 engines rolling down the runway, look up. Watch that unmistakable hump climb into the sky. You're not just seeing an airplane. You're seeing history still alive. You're seeing defiance. You're seeing the Queen of the Skies refusing to surrender.